Hi there, tech people. This is Sean Worker, your host of Adapter TechX, where we explore the trends and fads that are in technology, in travel, tourism, hospitality, and retail. Big shout out to our friends over at Hunter Gatherer for helping produce and edit, and all the other creative that they do, and our friends at No Vacancy with Glenn Hausman, who is now the highest ranking influencer in hospitality and podcasts in the United States. So check him out. I'm delighted to be here with George Sell. He's editor-in-chief of IHM with multiple brands, including the Urban Living Festival and multiple others that he will go into in a moment. We had a very interesting 10-minute conversation earlier on our quick cast. Some of the big topics that came out of that I'm sure we're now going to delve into and explore is everything from the attention span of the customer and how short it is, the seamless expectation of the experience that it, across any of the devices and platforms that we as customers use, we expect that continuity. This whole idea of making it easy to understand and to pass the granny test. Yeah, if your grandmother or someone else in that age group can use the tech, then it's working. Let's continue our chat about that. I mean, we spent about 10 very packed minutes, George. Again, just a quick summary of the brands and that you've developed over many years, 7 years plus, I guess, at this stage.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, International Hospitality Media is a publisher of B2B news websites for various strands of the hospitality industry. So we have boutique hotel news, we have service department news, and we have short-term rentals with a Z, or maybe I should say a Z on this podcast. I'm not sure.
Don't worry, we're omnipresent. You can Z.
Well, we'll fix it to everyone then. And that serves the vacation rental market. We also run award schemes for a couple of those brands. So we have the Shorties for the vacation rental sector and the Service Department Awards, both of which are taking place in London in May. We do targeted half-day events on a range of subjects across hospitality and real estate. We had to kind of turn the business on its head during the pandemic, and we've done well over 100 webinars in that time, which has been absolutely vital for our business. And we finally last year we launched our new flagship event called the Urban Living Festival, which we had to postpone several times due to the pandemic. And that's mainly looking at the future of urban development and particularly on the convergence of various hospitality and real estate asset classes. So that touches on all kinds of stuff. So hotels, service departments, co-living, co-working, senior living, build to rent, and all that stuff that's beginning to blur and the things that we're seeing in urban development trends.
Yeah, it's having participated in and watched the growth of the storytelling of the industry, you guys have been doing an amazing job with you and peers, and incredible. And if anybody hasn't gone to the Urban Living Festival, I went to it last year in Tobacco Dock. Incredible venue, incredible event, all about communication, connecting, and hopefully good people doing good business with others, and a lot of idea sharing. So you guys did an amazing job, George. So very cool indeed. So as we dig into this, I mean, you're kind of the aggregated storyteller, and when we just finished our short version, we're talking about what does it take to win an award at particularly in the tech category. And I love what you said. It just has to be. It got to do what it says on the tin, and it's got to be easy. And
yeah.
And if that hits that and it solves a problem, there's a high likelihood the judges will bend that direction because you can actually, it's tangible. You can react to it as opposed to something complicated. It's coming up on award season. Any tips for those that are submitting?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think the essence of good technology is something that makes a complicated issue or a complicated problem simple to overcome. Technology should be a tool to do that. And I think that translates to putting together a good award entry. If you can explain what the product or service does in terms that the layman understands. Excuse me, not that our judges don't have technological expertise in this particular character, but I think the more concise and the more simple your explanation is, the more likely you are to do well.
So, you've seen a lot of startups. What are the ones that I wouldn't, if you don't want to name names, that's okay. But, if you want to say, look, here's some that really stand out as solving problems. And then maybe the back end of that question then is, without naming names, is why is it that some kind of fell away? Well, from your interviewing and speaking with all of these leaders and startup founders. So, what are ones that stand out that seem to be solving problems for you in the industry?
Well, I think that the first thing is that a lot of these startups have raised a huge amount of money. There's been a lot of, there's been a rush to invest in tech startups, but that is not a benchmark for success. We've seen companies that have burned through a lot of money and haven't really succeeded.
Anybody you want to name?
It would be unfair to say. It would be unfair to single some out.
Hey, I tried. Yeah.
I think the best brands are, and the best products are, going back to what we've discussed before, the ones where when you hear about them, when they're explained to you, or when you read about them, you think, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I get that. It's something that addresses a recognizable problem in a way that makes the life of the end user much easier, I think.
Like, as an example, what comes to mind?
Well, the big thing at the moment is making the guest experience in hospitality as smooth and as seamless as possible. The pandemic, excuse me, the pandemic accelerated this trend for people wanting to have less and less interaction with people on property, and they want to do it all on their devices, whether normally their phone. So it's all about apps. It's all about getting stuff done as quickly as possible and as seamlessly as possible. I think initially we saw a lot of third-party providers developing this technology to sell to operators and property managers, but now I think increasingly they're developing their own, because they know exactly what they want. They've got a better idea of what their customers want. So I think that's an interesting trend. I saw a few brand presentations, case studies at MIPIM earlier in the week from operators, I guess you'd say, in the broader service living space. And they're all very keen to build themselves as technology companies who happen to operate real estate in the hospitality space. They didn't consider themselves, pure hospitality players. They were very keen to stress the tech element.
That's an interesting observation.
Their own tech.
That's an interesting observation in the sense of, when are you a highly tech-enabled company versus a tech company? And that there seems to be a lot of confusion out there, or how it's being presented. Why do you think that is?
The cynic in me would say that it's easier to get investment if you call yourself a tech company than a hospitality company, but
Right.
that may or may not be the case.
But not that you said that. That would be your inner cynic speaking.
Yeah. I didn't say that out loud. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, it's buzzy, and tech is not something that's there in a bubble, in a separate space now. Tech is so integrated with every facet of our lives. We're using technology all day, every day, most of us. Whether it's our phones or our computers, as we're on now. Our own company, for example, we're not a tech company, and we don't use any particularly complicated tech, but this service that we're using now, it's the StreamYard. We use Zoom for our webinars, but that technology has really enabled us to not only survive the pandemic, but to come out the other end stronger with a bigger database. It's introduced us to people we didn't know before, who we're going to go on and do business with. It's enabled us to connect people we know with other people we know, which is essentially what our business is all about. We're connectors. That's how we thrive ultimately. And yeah, I think it's a mistake to think of tech as something separate over here. because it's, it's what we use every day, and the best tech is the stuff that you instinctively understand what it does, why you need it, and how to use it. I think that's the simplest way I can put it.
Yeah, it's a great point when you think about is what problem is the technology trying to solve, and even that narrative, I would argue, is confusing when you hear somebody present it, particularly when they're using multiple platforms as a leverage point to deliver their change or iterative piece of technology that they've developed. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden you're a tech company. And that must be very confusing to report on. How do you deal with that within your media group?
Um, you get quite good at kind of filtering out jargon. If you, for example, if you get sent a press release, or a PR company phones you up to tell you about something, you get quite good at spotting the kind of current buzzwords that people chuck into the conversation. And then if you ask a couple of simple direct questions like, what does it actually do, why have you launched it, who is it aimed at, being direct and trying to, if they can answer those questions quickly and succinctly, going back to, pitching in 30 words, that's how you can cut through it. If you find yourself talking to someone who's flailing around a bit and waffling, and you're not sure what they're trying to say, then the product or the service probably isn't quite ready yet.
Right. So I mean, at the end of the day, you report what you report, and it's up to them to present their offering or their value prop in a way that's easy to understand. What you've now said, I would say, I'm guessing you got to be in the hundreds in the last 20 minutes where you've said, for goodness sake, make it easy to understand.
Yeah.
And we at Adapters TechX that's our mission, is to take the tech stack and the universe that is supporting that, make it understood. So that makes a ton of sense. So when you now think about what it looks like 18 months from now, I mean, yeah, I think you'll be suitably diplomatic when I say, well, who's going to be the winners and who's going to be the losers. But maybe you talk about trends. I know you're thinking about trends moving forward. What are the 2 or 3 trends that you think are going to be influencing businesses in the travel, tourism, hospitality, and retail space over the next 18 months?
Okay, well, before I go into those, I should preface this by saying, don't place too much stock in my opinion, because the first time someone showed me a website, I was deeply unimpressed, and it took so long to load that I did actually say, this is no good, this will never catch on, it's too slow. So knowing that, I will tell you what I think of the...
What site was it?
Sorry?
What site was this site that was never going to work?
I can't even remember.
For a minute, I was going to think it was said Amazon or something. I was going like, there you go.
No, it was long before that. It was in the very early days of the internet, in my defense. I guess what everyone's talking about at the moment is this Web 3.0, the Metaverse, crypto, NFT, and all this kind of stuff. I'm only really starting to get my head around it and understand it, but I do think it has some very useful applications for travel and hospitality. There are also other elements of it that I sense a touch of the emperor's new clothes about it, but it may well be proved to be wrong about that. But the blockchain and cryptocurrency, I think, is really interesting. We're already seeing hotel companies and specific hotels accepting payment in Bitcoin, which is quite interesting. A few companies such as Marriott and Ascot are starting to get in on the NFT piece, mainly I think as a kind of an add-on to their loyalty programs. I think it's a kind of a customer engagement and marketing piece, really. And
so
I guess,
just for everybody listening, an NFT is a non-fungible token, right? So it's a digital interpretation. Could be art, could be something else. So
yeah, I mean, until I started reading about these, I've never actually heard the word fungible before either. So it's pretty.
I think we'll leave that for other linguists.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the main one, the blockchain thing and the capacity to conduct financial transactions without a middleman is interesting. I know some of the bigger travel brands like TUI, they've developed their own blockchain, and I think in this day and age where direct bookings from the customer are seen as something as a holy grail for hospitality companies, I think there is a role for blockchain to help with that and speed that along. Um, I, I'm no expert on this, but I can see the potential for that.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting when we think about connecting the dots. And at the end of the day, it sounds, the big overwhelming term is direct. How do you get it direct and remove obstacles to get to the outcome? I think the analogy of the real estate industry and the property industry is shocking to me, as an example, right? Where it could take months to close on a house when it's actually a very predictable process.
Yeah,
So, and I just sold a house and I just bought a house. And again, I scratch my head at the absolute inefficiency of the selling and buying of a property in whereas if you look at it in the United States as a comparison, you can get a house sold and transacted in 2 weeks.
yeah,
Yet in certain parts of Europe, it can take months for all the bureaucracy and all of the intermediaries that get a piece of this.
yeah,
So what I think is interesting is those key learnings to say, why is there such resistance, which I is for a different show and a different topic within one industry, and yet we can learn a lot from that as to what not to do, which
yeah.
oftentimes is as important as to what to do, and translate that because it goes back to your same principles that you brought up earlier, which is how do you get this done fast and efficiently? It's just
Yeah.
checking somebody in, it's creating an event, it's booking a hotel reservation, it's booking a restaurant reservation, it's buying something in a store. How do you make this quick? Um, it-
I think there's also a financial implication for hospitality companies if they can transact with their guests via a blockchain, then they won't be paying commission to OTAs, for example. I mean, the OTAs are obviously very aware of what's going on here, but this the whole move towards direct booking is essentially it's so operators have to pay less commission, and if they want to, they can pass on a bit of value to the guest too. So both parties could potentially be winners there.
And also, as we kind of button up this particular topic, this notion of efficiency, this notion of direct, this notion of give it a go. It'll be interesting to see whether, if Marriott and Ascot and others, uh, is it a fad or a trend about tokens, or is that going to be an alternative payment model that is widely accepted? Time will tell.
Well,
Yeah.
if I could, I went to a session about the metaverse at MIPIM earlier this week, and there were some interesting things came out of it. So there were some big brands represented there, and they were saying companies such as Adidas have bought land in the metaverse.
Yes.
And you can also, not only can you buy land in the metaverse, but you can finance land in the metaverse. You can get a mortgage to buy land in the metaverse. Okay, so far so good, but I always remember Mark Twain's comment about land is it's a good investment because they're not making it anymore.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
then they blew my mind by saying there are new metaverses being created all the time. So the metaverse isn't just a single entity.
Yeah, Mark Twain has now got out of bed and gone, why did they tell me about the metaverse?
Yeah, there
So
are several of them. So I'm not quite sure how you value that land purchase, because you can't say they're not making it anymore, because they are, and they're going to carry on making all of it. So that's something I've got to get my head around. But I do understand some of the reasons brands are getting on there. There was a study that they quoted that said by 2026, 1 in 4 of the world's population will spend at least an hour a day in the metaverse. And I guess you can take from that that some people will be spending a lot more than an hour a day. Some people will be practically.
Think of it this way, George. It might actually be easier for us to find plumbers and electricians in the metaverse than in the real world. So that would be that'd be suitably helpful. It would also, it's amazing how job fairs, right? So now, as we know in the hospitality industry, and particularly the tech, has been pressured to deliver labor savings because we have inflation in labor, and obviously we have technology that is being demanded by investors that is saying, look, you need to do something about figure out how to make labor more efficient in your operations because it traditionally was cheap relative to the other markets. It'd be interesting in the metaverse as to, is that how job fairs of some meaning will actually occur? Will it be more efficient to find people locally through the metaverse rather than through, crazy ads across, or people hunting for locations where people gathering? Is it just going to be more efficient in these sorts of instances to find people, considering they'll probably spend an hour or 2 hours, like the study said, in a few years' time, hanging around there? Maybe it's easier to see them. What do you think?
In the in the fancy trainers and the designer suit and with the handbag that they bought for their avatar to or carry for a lot of money in some cases. I don't know, Sean. It's I think it's a generational thing. I think I struggle with it a little bit to see the value in those kinds of things, but it's here to stay, and I think it's going to be part of a suite of customer interactions. So there was a guy there actually who was the real estate director for Casino, which is one of the big retail chains in France, and they're very much looking at the metaverse as a way to complement their loyalty programs, their points programs. They're offering little,
experience,
exclusive offers that you can't get anywhere else. So it's it's another tool at the end of the day.
Yeah, and just the beginning, as we notice in the Adapters, the book, in the fourth age of change, that we literally are in the next epoch of vast change. And whether it's the metaverse and alternative realities where we can trade, we are a species of trading. We need to gather, and this is probably a different way in how we gather. And we can only begin to imagine how we will interact even 10 years from now. So it's amazing. But the question is, what will 10 years look like? One of the subjects near and dear to you is ESG. And when we talk about the environmental, social, and governance issues out on the planet today, what are you seeing from what you cover as being either top of mind or basically not in their mind at all for your audiences?
This is an area where in contrast with the metaverse and so on, this is an area where the tech already exists for people to see tangible results and tangible differences. I think the main thrust of the momentum that's pushing ESG is now coming from the institutional investment community. It's coming from the top down, if you like, rather than bottom up from consumer demand, apart from maybe in one or two sectors. But in hospitality and real estate, I do think it's the investors who are driving it, which is a good thing. And we are starting to see some pioneers building great buildings now, which are already zero carbon. They're doing some amazing things. We did a webinar the other week with a guy who built a hotel in Amsterdam, and they were growing quite a lot of food for the property in the hotel, with these amazing stacks of hydroponics, growing strawberries and vegetables and salads and things. Just around the corner, there's some interesting technology in terms of building materials. You've got these phase change materials which can absorb heat at certain times and store it, and then radiate it out at other times when needed. There's lots of interesting stuff going on, but I guess in more basic and more everyday terms, um, making buildings as energy efficient as possible is now very much it's very much with us if you invest in the technology. And at the end of the day, why wouldn't you? It's getting, the technology is getting cheaper, and it's great for the bottom line, especially with the way energy prices are going at the moment. The geopolitical situation in the world is a sharp focus, really. If you can cut your energy costs as much as possible, which you can do with the right technology, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I hope that we're all spending a little bit more time understanding the E, the S, and the G, and it's very complicated, and it's hard to sometimes absorb the world of the metaverse, the technology that's in building supplies, which a lot of the people I guess we would interact with wouldn't be on that front line of developing a building, but it's an integral part of understanding what these drivers are that drive efficiency in your building. Because if you've got a bad built building, you've got your outside of labor, energy is your most expensive P&L item.
Yeah,
And for some reason, we divorce these. I think we divorce these technologies and how they interact to drive an outcome, which is, hopefully an energy efficient, planet friendly building that is a great place to work and is efficient.
and
And
also,
back to the investors, what they expect, right?
yeah, and also, you say outside of labor, energy is your most, your biggest expense, but labor is such an issue now. Getting the right people is very, very difficult across real estate, but particularly across hospitality. And if you can make your buildings more efficient and save on your energy costs, then you can afford to pay people more, which means you can afford to hire the right people.
Mhm.
You know, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to recruit across most industries, but in hospitality, that's an acute situation at the moment.
Yeah, you're right, George. In the interviews and other conversations we've had with leaders in tech, what I think is a driving factor in observing and then having the ability to ask the questions about this is that this disconnect between a job and their life. And there are some solutions out there that are saying it's employee centric and it's guest centric, so that it's platform agnostic. I'm using a similar type of product at home with the apps that I use to order food from Good Eats or Uber Eats or whatever. Um, and then I go to the job and they've got something completely foreign to me, even though it's a digital device that I'm using. It has
Yeah,
no translatable user experience,
yeah,
which you've talked about a number of times across these platforms. So then you have ramp up problems. And the ones that crack that, regardless of the industry, are going to say it's easier to work there than it is here. So I'll go there.
yeah, yeah.
And it could be working for an optician, or it could be working for a hotel, or it could be working on a train. It's that fungibility of, see, there's fungible.
Oh, well done. You got it.
Fungibility. Fungible. Yeah, I like fungible. It's mushrooms. Um, is that this is what connects where people will choose to work.
Yeah,
And I don't think people have cottoned on to the technology is an enabler to a better form of relationship with the customer and the employee. It's not one or the other. I don't understand how we separate that. Are you seeing that
well,
before we wrap up?
I mean, if we take our own business as an example, we communicate. We mostly work remotely, and we have done since before the crisis. So communication is very important. So we use WhatsApp, we use Zoom, and we use email, which are all three things that people were using anyway. So it's like you say, it's using things that you're familiar with already in your professional life. In terms of hospitality operations, not only is the technology making buildings more efficient, um, we're also seeing that guests and customers want less human interaction, which means you need fewer staff. So you've got to get the guest-facing technology right, and then that, as I say, with fewer staff there and more efficient buildings and more efficient guest-facing tech, then you've got more in your recruitment part to pay the right people, because technology is vital and it's a key part of what we all do every day. But you can't run a hospitality business without people. There are fewer people involved now, but at the end of the day, you need great people. You need problem solvers. You need empathetic people who can deal with stuff, because situations happen in the running of a building, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a senior living community, whether it's a flexible workspace. Situations will arrive which need to be handled by a human being. So you need the best people there alongside the best technology you can get your hands on to give the service that you want to.
I think you've summed this up really good in our conversation over the last numerous minutes, where technology is as good as the people that interact with it, and what they think is what will succeed. So, George, a big thank you for spending the time and connecting a lot of dots for us. There's a lot of fodder here that we will need to think of. So, thank you for that. And keep up the great work at IHM. It's pretty impressive. So we spent some time with George. I think if anybody's got some tips, George has given you some insights as to how to win those badges that many people like to call awards to promote your business. He's given you some insights. Keep it simple, 29 words or less, or something like that. Equally, some big topics that we're all facing that we're going to need to think about. It could be as complex as the metaverse, where we're selling fungible tokens that are hamburgers that you can just look at, or you can buy a house, or you may be able to buy land in the fictional world. And Mark Twain is certainly scratching his head now, but a man of that caliber and the command of the English language, I'm sure he's already fixed it in his mind. So this is up to us to think about the complexities around technology to enable efficiency, to take technology and build it early into the investment in the form of buildings or retrofitting buildings so you drive efficiency, especially in the times of rampant inflation in energy and labor. And the user experiences come up again and again and again across multiple interviews on with tech leaders. And this odd divide between the user and me as an employee and me as a guest, and cracking that into a seamless exchange, as George brought up, is a critical element, that you're transitioning from home to work in a way that isn't jarring. And that's what technology also enables, and those that architect it. So thanks to all. Thanks again for watching and listening to another show and podcast of Adapter TechX. A big call out to our friends at No Vacancy and Hunter Gatherer for supporting and creating with us. And until the next time, stay techie.